Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying.
Yes, guys, welcome back to the instant reaction on the Cannon podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you joining us. Arsenal 2, Crystal Palace 2 in something called the Premier League, which I believe we're still a part of. I'm not sure we want to be a part of it, but apparently we are still a part of it. 2-2 draw, pretty underwhelming results at the Emirates. George, 13 draws, that makes that. 13 draws. That is nearly 40% of our Premier League results this season have been draws. Goal from Mateta and Eze for them, and goals from Trossard and God, I've forgotten the first one. Who was the first one?
Kivior.
Kivior, sorry, Kivior with the header in the first half.
You want to forget it already?
Yeah, exactly. I really want to put it in the past. Obviously, eyes are pretty much all set on next week. But yeah, what did you make of that performance?
I get annoyed more about these type of performances than losing when we deserve to lose, to be honest, because it's more about the application and the mentality that you show when you're out there. And I expect us to be disjointed in an 11 that we clearly rotated, with people that we wouldn't like, and with a team, by the way, with a complete eye to Tuesday. That's not a problem for me, but I just found it really unprofessional as far as the application went. And when we were in possession, the speed, it's sometimes that simple, the messaging of your passing, and far too often when we face these physical mid blocks, yes, we have an eye to Tuesday. Yes, there are other things on our agenda, but to not play with speed, to not respect and earn the right to win by pace of pass, intention, looking to probe. Far too often we would get to the middle third and there was just a reluctance to want to punch the ball forward or to even really threaten quickly from wide areas. I mean, some of the biggest things that we've praised the team for in the Champions League has been the quickness of thought and the quick switches, the quick intent to speed up our play. And, yes, coordinate with several rotations and whatnot. But I was just really frustrated because, when I had a look at that lineup, I thought, okay, this is a team that can get the job done. And I don't mind it going into second gear. And, there was actually some moments in the first half and some moments in the second half that you thought, okay, there are some people having good-ish games. I think really only Trossard was somebody for me that consistently throughout the game had a fairly good game beyond just the goal that he had scored. I thought he was actually quite secure in dropping out of the block and trying to become an option. But I am getting frustrated with our solution to these physical mid blocks. I have been really critical on Mikel, generally speaking. And I think some of our biggest culprits, like you have to call a spade, like for as much as we give praise to William Saliba, that is an incredibly poor decision. And that has nothing to do with Kivior as your partner. That has everything to do with concentration. We saw it against Madrid. And then I think the recovery tackle by Odegaard was pathetic. The whole play there was quite pathetic as far as what I expect this Arsenal team to serve up. And that's the goal that I'm really quite annoyed with. I thought David Raya struggled today in terms of his cross-claiming, wasn't coming off. And generally speaking, I think Urian Timber had a good game. I think Trossard had a good game. And then other than that, I'm struggling. Kivior had a decent game as well. But other than that, the whole team absolutely had a mind to Tuesday. But I think it gave me impressions of a training match, and it's the Premier League game.
Yeah,
you got to come with some kind of intensity that is a bit more than I'm going to just look forward, because, mate, you prepare well by winning. You prepare to win the Champions League by winning in the Premier League. I distinctly believe that. I don't believe that you can turn it on and off inside a week. And I would be very frustrated if I was Mikel. I would be tearing into the team as far as the intensity and the application went towards this game, because it wasn't there.
Yes, lots of threads there. On the intensity and application, I completely agree. I think that was, look, I think there's there's always going to be a level in these sorts of games where, okay, you maybe don't want to do just that extra 1% or 2% because you're worried about, maybe overstretching yourself or whatever, and maybe there's just a little bit of caution in your play. But there's 1% and there's 15% or 20% or maybe even 30%, which think we felt this evening. I think the application in terms of, I think you're totally right in terms of the tempo, the desire to break Crystal Palace down, the desire to circulate the ball, to switch the ball quickly, to find players in dangerous positions and do things with the ball, I think was really poor. And I don't think it can all be explained by, oh, we're just thinking about Real Madrid next week. Sorry, not Real Madrid, PSG next week. Maybe we're still thinking about Real Madrid. Yeah, I don't think it can be all explained by that, because I think we've seen that in the Premier League before. I don't think this is just a sort of a situation we're seeing this week. To be totally honest, I don't look around and say any individual is massively culpable. I think you mentioned a few players who had decent games. I thought I think Trossard had a decent game. I think Raya, I don't know. I think sometimes commentators that I think I was watching Sky the other day, and they literally said in the Ipswich game, they were like, well, the drama we were trying to create hasn't worked. And you're like, okay, that's the incentive of these broadcasters. I think sometimes these narratives get decided by broadcasters. I thought David Raya didn't have his best game, but I didn't think he was absolutely awful. I actually thought Ødegaard was pretty good this evening. I thought Ødegaard, in terms of dropping out the block, in terms of progressing us, I thought he was trying to take some shots. So it didn't quite work out for him, but I thought he was pretty good this evening. I thought Martinelli had a pretty good game. Maybe the less said about Sterling, the better. But I thought generally we were all right. It's just everyone had dropped their level. And that tells you about where people's heads are at. And yeah, then you have a moment like that against Saliba, against a team that are willing to take risks. And there was a moment with Eze which sort of sums up what Arsenal aren't. And I'm not saying we go there, but the ball comes out to him, and even in how he takes his goal, that is just such a non-Arsenal finish, like the way he finishes that. And I think if you're a risky team, if you're a team who does take things on and does try things, you can probably afford to drop off like that. But we're a team that it feels like we have to be absolutely at our level for the game model to be as dominant as we want it to be. The moment we drop off 5-10%, and I think it was probably more this evening, everything seems to fall apart for us because we don't have that individual sort of gene in us. And I think it really hurts us when we do that. So yeah, and then there was this moment with Eze where he sort of tries to bend it far post, and I watched him and I was like, that's just we would never do that in these sorts of games, or have shots from the centre backs or whatever. If you're not going to be quick in possession, if you're not going to press in the same intensity, if you're not going to, be at your level as we know Arsenal can be, then you need someone to try and stick it, top pins. You need someone to try and dribble through the whole team, because that's what a game like this needs, and we just didn't have that. Yeah, a really frustrating evening. But yeah, go on.
I just think part of my frustration with this is I've seen this solution to a physical mid block not happening well, and especially with our midfield. Like, I don't know, I may disagree a bit on the Odegaard performance in general, but it wasn't just him that's at fault. Like, I personally felt like he had a pretty average game, and I thought he was struggling quite a bit. But I don't understand this intent to have Rice pin the back line in a time when we're not able to break down a physical mid block. Why Odegaard is the one that is going to potentially drop into the pivot next to a Thomas Partey and have a Trossard drop outside of the line to receive, by the way, which is what he was doing quite a bit, and have Declan be the one that's going to pin center backs. I don't understand that. And I will never understand that. And we've done this a lot against kind of physical mid blocks. And it's about what kind of profile you want pinning those back lines. And I'm sorry, I don't want Declan Rice on the last line doing those things. Brilliant player. Keep him into areas where he's great. You look at a Miles Lewis-Skelly in that position, a simple switch. It's not even just positionally, but you look at the type of profile that is asked to pin those backlines. I'd much rather, again, Trossard had a good game, but I don't see the point with somebody that's had a good game to keep him so far away from the box. And then, when we're kind of getting to the point in which we do this switch with, Ethan Nwaneri and Kieran Tierney coming onto the pitch, right? I don't understand why we don't have Martinelli close to goal in terms of being more of a presence in the box. If you're going to throw on a Kieran Tierney, right? What is the point in having him make a half space run up the pitch? Like, if you're going to play him, then have, a Trossard at left wing that's coming on the inside. Have Martinelli be more of a striker. And we aren't smart in terms of us trying to change games in that way. And I think the biggest frustration that I personally have is this isn't just let's wait to PSG. This is a conclusion that we're going to have to circle back on in a review of the season, in which we've seen far too often across the course of a season, in which when we get into a lull, in which the possession drops, the tempo drops, you see a U-shaped pattern, and we're against this physical mid-block that we struggle to break down. It's fine to want to change things, but we need to start highlighting where people are most threatening against these mid-blocks. We need to start highlighting a better plan than repeating the same one that we seem to want to do, because I've seen the same subs and the same iteration without the same success and continued failure, for lack of a better word, at it. So I really think that we need to rethink our impetus in these kind of games. And, I don't know if I'm asking Declan Rice to be a second striker against a physical mid-block.
I agree with your first point, but I don't know if I agree with the conclusion. Look, in a game like this, I think we don't have those solutions without a Kai Havertz, for example, stretching the back line, or with this situation with Leandro Trossard sort of dropping into the midfield. I think I probably would put Rice penning the back line. The question is that the perfect solution with everyone available and after a summer transfer window? No. So in a night where we have Leandro Trossard and Martin Odegaard and Declan Rice in the central spaces, for me, he is the person I'd put up there to be in those physical sort of battles, but that isn't what I want long term. And I think maybe where we maybe disagree on the evening, but we do agree over the course of the season that we haven't found we pick a game. We haven't found consistently different solutions to deal with these sorts of games. And yeah, I said this after, I think it was the Everton game. I think my anger for this season will depend. Really will depend what happens in the Champions League. Ultimately, if we win the Champions League, no one's going to care about this sort of stuff. We will care as Arsenal nerds, but in terms of how we'll fix this in the summer, we'll look back to these sorts of things. But no one's going to be looking for we're not going to be doing what went wrong think pieces if Arsenal win the Champions League, right? We're only going to look back on these sorts of fixtures, these good, Goodison and Crystal Palace and, all the other sort of games, the Brentford game, and be going, what went wrong if we don't win the Champions League. And it's just such a high risk. Anything can happen in these games. And I find it mad that we're putting up this sort of performance, especially when the rhythm of a win against a Crystal Palace or a Brentford or whatever, Mikel Arteta fully knows what that can do to sort of propel you into the Champions League. Even Bukayo Saka, look, I'm not criticising Bukayo Saka, but Saka didn't look like he was sort of prepping for a midweek, Champions League game. He was sort of happy to take it, stand up Turek Mitchell and basically pass it back. And he was maybe coming into the game or whatever, and you could look at his fitness or whatever. But, my point is more that every single player looked ready to sort of shrink into themselves. And that's more my concern. And this stat, I think, is huge. And a lot of these mid-block games come into this. Arsenal have now dropped 18 points from winning positions in the Premier League in 24-25, more than in the two previous seasons combined with 17. Only Everton with 14 have drawn more Premier League games than the Gunners this campaign. I just feel like we're heading into a very dangerous game at the end of this season, because if we don't win this Champions League, we're looking at a horrific drop-off in the Premier League with consistent issues, not just, it's not just injuries or whatever, like real game model issues that we've got to have a look at. And, a European campaign that ultimately came to nothing. So it's high risk. It really is. And I'll be pretty angry if we don't get through against PSG.
I think it highlights the importance of the margins and of the details, personally, because a 2% drop off in intensity like that results in the exact stat that you're talking about from losing winning positions to me.
And it does, sorry to cut you, but this is my point from earlier, and it does for us, because we're so reliant on the collective, because we collectively drop off, because we don't rely on the individual. Then in a game like this, if you're going to drop off a little bit, you have to allow the space for the individual, and we don't have that. So it's even bigger problem for us when that happens for us.
I think it's just one of my biggest issues is that we struggle with tempo, generally speaking. Um, if it's a question of transitions and transition efficiency, it is the decision making in transitions and the tempo to which we do it with. Either we're too rushed or we don't gamble enough in transitions. Then you want to go back to the mid block problem. There are times from winning positions where we look to recycle the ball, lose our tempo, and when we're faced in front of the mid block, we actually don't want to play through or play ahead or play around. We're far too happy to recycle, reload. And it gets into this issue of false security. And the ball becomes slow, it becomes predictable, and that's a lot easier to defend against. Like the famous Ola Aina quote only works if you have movement ahead. And we weren't really moving today. We got into a city, which is easier to defend. Yes, Palace are restricting space for your forwards, but that was easy to defend when you have people that are kind of staying in place. They're not really rotating quite a bit. I didn't see a very big movement. Again, bar maybe Trossard, who was really the only one from higher up the pitch willing to drop out of the block and really create and ask questions. Yes, in the first half, Odegaard dropped into the pivot a bit more, was leaning a little bit left. That's an option. But I think when we don't make ourselves available enough between the lines, we're not willing to punch it through the lines enough. And at some point, if we're going to refuse to go through teams and going around them is going to become predictable, you need to have a more efficient way of going over teams. We can't rely on a single pattern to continuously go. And for me, it's underpinned by tempo because we know what we have to do. I don't think it's a lack of not knowing because I see it. Look at Ipswich. I didn't see this issue with tempo against Ipswich. That game, we were a lot better at that. But I find, again, different type of team. It wasn't really a physical mid-block, a little bit more of a low block, and we actually have more success with those. I just think that we need to be very specific about the problems that we face because there are certain patterns this season. And for me, we have to be reflective about that beyond the injuries, beyond the context of what we know, because isolating that problem in that game state for me is the difference between Arsenal winning trophies and us just competing. I think once we master that, there's not really a game model I worry about in particular.
Yeah.
It's why I didn't want Atletico Madrid or Inter Milan, by the way. Like when I'm looking and I'm saying, I want PSG, I want Barca, I want Real Madrid, it's because I trust us against those types of games. Styles make fights. Anybody in the fighting game will tell you that. And for us right now, we have trouble. You want to call it through the injuries. We don't really have a Kai Havertz or Marino to go over the top as effectively. Fair. But I think the biggest cardinal sin is just the caring to which the team approached. And it was unprofessional. I hate when the team does stuff. And it's not often. It's maybe once or twice a season. But when it happens so collectively, I think that that's an issue. I hate that. It really bugs me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, on the night, we don't have a stretcher in behind because Kai Havertz is injured. We don't have Bukayo Saka around the outside to make, through round and over. We don't have over. We don't have round. And we seem, maybe tempo-wise, as you were saying, unable to go through. And in terms of the receivers to go through in these types of situations. You can make excuses for this evening. You could say, Champions League next season. Champions League next week. You could say, Kai Havertz. You could say injuries. You could say form, whatever. Premier League, Liverpool, whatever. You can make as many excuses as you want for this evening. But there is a wider picture here for sure. And yeah, we've got to find a solution this summer. Nefemi says Marseille needs to be able to find Saka when he's through on goal. I've seen this like 3 times this season. Sorry, I'm a bit lost where I was reading. I've seen this like 3 times this season. Just look up and pass, man. Yeah, I mean, weirdly, like for a team that is pretty risk averse, I think again, I want to hold on to players like Martinelli, but there's certainly not no issues with him. I don't know. I mean, I don't feel that was the issue for me with Martinelli this evening. I look up someone like a Raheem Sterling's performance and look, let's forget the DL aspect of that and the club squad building aspects of that. Just his performance and application. I don't think I've seen Raheem Sterling win a physical battle in an Arsenal shirt. I genuinely will say that. And if you can't hold the ball and then you can't burst past your man and beat them, you are almost, and I would love to know the numbers on this, When Saka's on the pitch, that ball is constantly going out to him because the players trust him. I would love to know the number of balls when Saka is playing right wing versus Raheem Sterling that just go to the right winger. Forget the name. How many balls you see? Even Declan Rice getting sort of attracted to that side to go and deal with that side. They don't trust him. They do not trust him, and I don't understand. You know, we have issues, as we've said before, with the way Nwaneri maybe interprets that position. Maybe drifting aside a little bit too much, and no one's Bukayo Saka, but I don't understand what Raheem Sterling has done in an Arsenal shirt to give him that start this evening. Like I really don't get that. I don't get it at all.
Yeah, I have a problem with investing in people that you don't have a future with, fundamentally, right? Like even if you're worried about Ethan Nwaneri in terms of minutes, he's the future. He's somebody that I would want to invest in. You know, part of the problem is a little bit more to do with again the whole context of the Raheem Sterling thing. Like, it's not Sterling specifically, it's the forward recruitment that people have an underlying anger with, right? And I think we've seen enough with Sterling in an Arsenal shirt and as far as what's happening this season to kind of bed that conversation in terms of his effectiveness. But I hope that Mikel looks at these last couple games and again is playing for the future. We talked about it a couple pods ago that we wanted to see future rotations. We wanted to see some experimentations within the Premier League, and all I saw was some of the same mistakes. And but even worse,
where's Cabia? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, why can't you get? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean, where's Miles in midfield? Where's your Ethan starting as a 10? Where's, if you want to try him false 9? Okay, like if the idea was rotation, fair. No problem. If the idea is even, okay, we're going to get minutes in so that I can get Ethan on a little bit later. You want to have a better game state for Ethan to come into, fine. But I just have a real problem with Mikel's insistence on the same solutions to the same problems here. And that's just more of my issue. And I think broadly speaking, like this, it's such a difficult game to do an IR with when you have the team and players provide an application like that. And I'm just going to end on that because I can't have a single player debate here. I can't have anything beyond.
Yeah,
it is unprofessional and it's not right to approach a game that way. You earn the right to win every time you're on the pitch. And I'm really pissed when I see stuff like that because, mate, I firmly believe this. You don't turn on mentality. You don't turn on an ability to win. You don't just say because PSG's next week, suddenly you're going to start to play. And it really angers me the week before or the game before a major game that you've got, that you're playing like that in application. I don't care if you're a bench warmer. I don't care if you're the star player on the team.
Yeah.
You build consistency through consistent performances. That includes training, that includes matches. No problem lowering the intensity if you don't want to go for that extra sprint to hurt yourself, but you apply yourself and you make sure that when you're in positions to threaten, you threaten. You make sure that as a team, when we're pressing as a team. You're not pressing in individuals. And if you're going to put on the laces to get on that pitch, you guys earn the right to win. And you do that each and every time. That's all you ask. If there's some mistakes, we'll reflect on it. But I just felt like as a team, we didn't earn the right to win that match today.
Yeah, I agree. And as you said, and as I said earlier, you know, maybe 1% drops off or 2% because you got a big game midweek, but that was too far. It was far too far. And yeah, it's really, really hard to justify it. Damien Lynette says Martin Odegaard has been superb this evening. This is the level we're after and the level we'll know we can deliver. Oh, this is my tweet. Look, this week I've been called a disgrace for defending Martin Odegaard and a disgrace for attacking Martin Odegaard. So, you know, pick your poison. He's obviously a very polarizing player, and there is incredibly strong opinions both ways. I just thought Martin Odegaard had a pretty good game this evening, to be honest. I thought in terms of what he is and what he can be at the moment, I thought it was encouraging, and people will think I'm an idiot for that, and that is fine, or also think I'm completely right for that, and that's fine as well. Daniel Johansson, wish Martinelli would look up once in a while. Another about Martinelli. Yeah, I mean, I do feel on nights like these, we can sort of go back to our just general frustrations with players. Like, you know, when we feel the application is lower than the sort of the usual, you know, it's like fighting with your girlfriend, isn't it? It's
it was like a poor
the old arguments come out when you feel like, you know, one of you isn't making an effort, and it's like, well,
Yeah, I definitely don't think it was a lack of effort with him. It was a very poor moment. Like it's got to be a heads up display, and he's been pretty consistent the last 5 to 6 games, I would say, generally speaking. But it was just it was poor moment. He should have looked up, should have played in Saka earlier. Saka was furious, and rightfully so. He's got to in those moments realize that sometimes I feel like Martinelli is this guy that, again, he's got this tendency to just want to do it all himself a bit. And there's got to be moments in which he applies his energy. I mean, I think the coaches have done a lot of work on Martinelli to just not run like 90 minutes all the time. Like there has been the level of let's just scale back some of your intensity because you're bringing it on all the time.
Yeah.
And I just feel like when you're in a position like your touchline like that, you've got to realize that the distance to goal is massive here. So you're going to get tired in the sprint. Carry it for a certain amount of time, and you've got to look up and see your options. And I think it's just a poor moment. I don't have anything to say much beyond that, to be honest.
Yeah. Again, as we sort of alluded to, for me, it's not the night to pick out particular individual performances. Obviously, we have discussed individuals, but the far bigger factor is a collective performance that is, and it's just not at the level from everyone, from literally everyone. So it's not, it's for me, it's not the night to look at anyone in particular and blame them. Nathan says the block is painful. Bring players enabling us to create overloads in this state or give up control. Risky direct game and ask teams to play hard at the field for more counter potential. Well, yeah, I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier. However you choose it, whether it's shots from distance or more carries in the middle or more pace or the transition threat, pick your poison. I don't care what it is. We can't keep playing these teams the same way, whether it's the Villas and the Newcastles, and that it's a big issue. And I think there has been some adaptation through the course of the season. I think we are slightly more transitional. I would need to see the numbers, but certainly in intent, in terms of trying to break quickly. I feel like Raya tries to get us going a little bit quicker. I feel like we try to make more of the sort of high turnover moments than we maybe used to. I do feel maybe there's been a pulling back on going long without Kai Havertz, which it is a big miss. But in general, there hasn't been enough adaptation over the course of the season to these game states. And there's only so many times we can say that.
Yeah, I just go back to my point about having, Declan Rice pin the back line, for example, because it's not just today that you don't have somebody like that to do it, but we've seen that happen and that mentality happen quite a bit, in which Rice is a higher 8 against the physical mid block. And I'm looking at it and I'm trying to understand that mentality, because I need to have a different profile in there if that's the idea to box crash.
But on that specifically, George, mate, like, if you have a midfield of Rice and Odegaard, that does make sense to me. The point is the midfield construction more generally in the squad. Like, I mean, that's the issue.
I don't know, mate. Like, I don't think so. Like, especially against a mid block, I would rather have Odegaard. If he can't operate in the pockets, and we're talking about a number 10 that cannot operate in the pockets, particularly when buying Zubamendi, having Rice, Marino, Miles Lewis-Skelly in the team, then we're talking about Odegaard not being able to play. And, it can't be a position that Odegaard can only work by dropping into the pivot. It has got to be a case of it. When you have a mid-block issue, okay, and we're struggling to go around teams, okay, and you're asking your team to go over the top or through a team, even if you're asking Declan Rice to run, this isn't a player that is elite over 25 yards without the ball to stretch a back line. This is a guy that, with the dribbling, has the power to dribble and carry you from basically your build up to the final third. But this isn't the guy that's going to run from deep and create real separation over 25 yards. That's not the type of profile he is. So even in intent, I'm struggling to understand, by putting him there, you're not even achieving the role that you want. If you want a box crashing second striker and you want somebody that's effectively Emile Smith-Rowe, Desiree Doué, why didn't you go out and get it? That is the profile that works there, not Declan Rice. So I have no problem with the tactic, but why are you using a player that doesn't even do that well enough? And if we're saying that Odegaard's only able to drop into the pivot, by the way, only, and that's the only thing that we can do, and he can't adapt to being higher up the pitch, then we have a much bigger problem in midfield than I think we're willing to admit on reflection. Because
Well, I
to
mean
me,
that I
limited.
think you've kind of come around to what I'm saying is that it's a squad issue. And if you're looking at just Rice and Odegaard, I hear your concerns, but if it's just between those two, that is the construction I'd use. But if we don't have a player who can receive in the pockets and we're not willing to use Waneri, that is the issue for me, rather than necessarily that construction of those two. Dale Carragher, is Arsenal's defence as good as we think? They keep giving up goals that seem avoidable. Well, yeah, look, two big errors from Saliba in the last couple of games, and obviously a poor from at times from Raya tonight, although I think it got a little bit overblown on Sky commentary. I think we are. I think look at the overall numbers, look at the sample size that we have. Look, we're in a very weird time of the season, in my opinion, where we're trying to make sense of it, and it probably can only be made sense of in retrospect. If we go on to win the Champions League, we're just going to say, yeah, a little bit of a defensive drop off, probably because we went on to win the Champions League. If we don't win the Champions League, it's proof that our defense was always, So we're going to have to probably analyze it in retrospect, unfortunately.
It is frustrating that we're not keeping clean sheets at the Emirates. I felt like that for a while. But it's not because I think that we're a poor defense. It's a concentration issue, and I'm annoyed about it. But I don't think it's an individual based. I think it's a team based. And when you invite teams to come onto you in the manner that we've invited Palace to do at home, then it's inevitable that there's going to be mistakes. And I mean, they're glaring. You can't legislate for that, because I don't think William Saliba does that in the first leg of the Champions League. He doesn't do that regularly. This isn't something that I would say is common with William Saliba, and it's not alone, by the way. Like, I've seen us do this and concede pretty poor errors, generally speaking, to not have a clean sheet. It's just about carrying that intensity, and I mean, I will say we are probably a team that respect that intensity more than anybody in the world. So when it happens, I'm more willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, to say, okay, you can get a pass, because 95% of the time, Arsenal are the most intense out of possession. It's not going to really make sense as far as commentary on this game, given how much the application was really poor. But if I had numbers to back up the number of defensive sprints this team does in general in comparison to everybody else, then yeah, I think those numbers would tell a story.
Yeah. Let's finish with the stats. Arsenal 2, Crystal Palace 2, 1.6 expected goals to their 2.2, 12 shots to their 15, 4 on target each, 6 open play shots to their 9, 67.8% possession to their 32.2. Yeah, I mean, in terms of, again, another story of another game in the Premier League where we have a lot of the passes completed, we have more of the possession, we have more of the final third entries, we have more of the zone 14 touches, but we can't seem to sort of translate that into shots and expected goals and shots on target. So that tells you the story of the season, really. There's the running XG over the course of the night. If you want to have a look at that, you can. There is the shot map, Crystal Palace on the right and Arsenal on the left. Some big chances centrally that get missed out. But yeah, some big chances for Crystal Palace as well, close to our goal. We did win the Field Tilt World Championships, though, George. And even on a night like tonight,
it's a small win.
It's a small win. It's not a small win. It's a huge win. 60% Field Tilt to 40%. Looking like a sort of, I suppose, with the blue sort of valleys and lakes and rivers, maybe. Lovely. Yeah. Difficult night. But look, it will all be forgiven if we can beat Paris Saint-Germain. So we will be here. George and Rohan did a rewatch, which will be available for everyone from Friday on the PSG games. Please watch it. We had a bit of a tech nightmare, and I had to go through and manually pause on the edit where they paused. It was an absolute nightmare. Please watch it. Please sign up and watch it. So we got that coming out on Friday. George will not be here till next Wednesday because he has his PhD defense next Tuesday. So we're wishing a very big Cannon Podcast good luck to George for your PhD defense. Yes. What a night. Arsenal Football Club. 13 draws. Oh my goodness me. Yes, we'll finish there. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, George, for being here.
Thank you guys, and thank you everybody in the comments and all the support on X. I feel a lot of your love and I appreciate it. And I will definitely be back after Wednesday, hopefully with some good news on both fronts, not just on the PhD, but Arsenal having done the business in the first leg.
For sure. Thank you all for being here. God, I hope we win against PSG. Thanks for watching, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying.